The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Zexthara of the Valonian Empire stood before the assembled delegates. Her crystalline form caught the artificial sunlight streaming through the dome, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. Around her, representatives from 47 different species waited with barely concealed anxiety. "Honored delegates," Zexthara began, her voice resonating through the chamber's translation matrix, "we face an unprecedented crisis. The human species has rejected our terms for peaceful integration into the galactic community." A ripple of concern passed through the assembled beings. The Krillian delegates' tentacles writhed nervously, while the silicon-based Vorthack representatives' core pulsed with agitation. Humanity had been discovered only 5 years ago, a young species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their rejection of the Council's generous offer was unthinkable. "What were their exact words?" asked Chancellor Morduck of the hegemony, his massive frame leaning forward in his gravity-adjusted seat. Zexthara's form dimmed slightly. "They said, and I quote, 'Thanks, but we'll pass on the whole subordinate species thing. We prefer to make our own way.'" The chamber erupted in shocked chatter. Subdelegate Yith of the Aquatic Collective's gills fluttered rapidly as she spoke. "Surely they don't understand the implications? No species can survive outside the Council's protection. The pirates, the void hunters, the rogue AI collectives, they were informed," Zexthara interrupted. "Our diplomatic team provided comprehensive data on the dangers facing unprotected species. The humans acknowledged the risks, but maintained their position." Chancellor Morduck's 4 eyes focused intently on the Valonian ambassador. "And their military capabilities? Primitive by our standards. Chemical rockets for early space exploration, crude fusion drives for their recent interstellar vessels. Their weapons technology is approximately 3 centuries behind Council standard. They possess no energy shields, no quantum weaponry, no orbital defense platforms of note." The tension in the chamber began to ease. Several delegates exchanged looks of relief. High Arbiter Quell of the Synthetic Collective processed the information through her quantum matrix before speaking. "If they refuse to join willingly, and they lack the technology to defend themselves effectively, then the solution is clear. We must bring them into the fold by force, for their own protection." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. It wouldn't be the first time the Council had been forced to incorporate a stubborn species through military action. Most came to appreciate the benefits of membership once they experienced the security and prosperity it provided. "I concur," said Warprime Keshtar of the militant caste, his scarred carapace gleaming under the lights. "My battle fleets can have their homeworld surrounded within 2 standard cycles. A show of overwhelming force should convince them to reconsider." "Approved," Chancellor Morduck declared after a brief vote. "Warprime, you are authorized to deploy the 7th Battle Fleet to the Sol system. Standard pacification protocols apply, minimal casualties, infrastructure preservation, and immediate transition to protectorate status upon surrender." As the session adjourned, few delegates paid attention to a small detail in the intelligence report. The humans had asked only one question during the diplomatic meetings: what happens to species that refuse to join? When told that such species were typically incorporated by force for their own good, the human ambassador had simply nodded and said, "Thank you for the clarification." 3 weeks later, Warprime Keshtar's massive dreadnought, the Dominion's Will, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Behind it followed 237 vessels of various classes, battlecruisers, destroyers, fighter carriers, and support ships. It was enough firepower to level a planet's surface twice over. "Impressive system," commented Fleet Captain Veltar as she studied the tactical displays. 8 planets, extensive asteroid mining operations, thriving colonies on multiple worlds. They've been busy for such a young species. Warprime Keshtar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction as he observed the human homeworld growing larger on the main screen. "Send the standard ultimatum. Demand immediate surrender and compliance with Council integration protocols." If they refuse, we begin with precision strikes on military installations. The communication officer's translator crackled to life moments later. War Prime, we're receiving a response from the human government. Put it through. A middle-aged human woman appeared on the main viewer, her expression calm and professional. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decoration. I am Director Sarah Chun of Earth's Defense Council. War Prime Keshtar, I presume. You presume correctly. I trust you understand why we're here, Director Chun. Your species' refusal to accept Council protection has left us no choice but to implement mandatory integration protocols. Director Chun nodded slowly. We understand your position, War Prime. However, our answer remains the same. We respectfully decline membership in your Galactic Council. Then, you force our hand, Keshtar replied, his voice hardening. We will begin systematic destruction of your military assets in 30 standard minutes. I suggest you use that time to reconsider. War Prime, Director Chin said quietly. Before you begin, I need to inform you of something. When your ambassadors told us that resistant species are conquered by force, we took that information very seriously. We've spent the last 5 years preparing for this moment. Keshtar's laughter rumbled through the bridge. Director, your species barely has fusion drives. Our weapons can sterilize planets. What possible preparation could? His words died as proximity alerts began screaming across every console on the bridge. The tactical display lit up with thousands of new contacts, appearing as if from nowhere. They were small, barely larger than fighter craft, but there were so many of them that they blocked out the stars. Impossible, Fleet Captain Veltar whispered. Where did they come from? Director Chin's image remained steady on the screen. War Prime, meet the Earth Defense Force. We may not have energy shields or quantum weapons, but we have something else. We have 3.5 billion people who really don't like being told what to do. The small craft weren't alone. Massive structures were decloaking throughout the system. Space stations bristling with weapons, asteroid fortresses that had been hollow rocks just moments before, and ships. Thousands upon thousands of human vessels, ranging from converted cargo haulers to purpose-built warships that looked like they'd been designed by someone with a very grim sense of humor. Director, Keshtar said, struggling to maintain his composure. Even with these numbers, your technology is still centuries behind ours. This is meaningless posturing. Is it? Director Chun smiled for the first time, and something about that expression made Keshtar's blood run cold. War Prime, tell me, when your species developed spaceflight, what did you do first? We explored. We sought knowledge and contact with other species. Interesting. When humans developed spaceflight, the first thing we did was figure out how to kill each other with it. We've had wars in space for longer than some of your member species have had electricity. We spent 5 years doing nothing but building weapons and training soldiers. Every human adult is military trained. Every settlement is a fortress. Every ship is a weapon. The proximity alarms were joined by targeting alerts. Hundreds of weapon locks were painting Keshtar's fleet from every direction. But your technology, he began, is primitive, yes. We can't punch through your shields with energy weapons. We can't match your speed or maneuverability. But we've learned something in our short, violent history, War Prime. There's more than one way to kill. On cue, the human vessels began their attack. But instead of energy beams or missiles, they deployed something far more terrifying, clouds of small, dark objects that spread between the Council ships like a malignant swarm. What are those? Fleet Captain Veltar demanded of her sensors operator. Unknown, Fleet Captain. They appear to be metal spheres, each about the size of a fusion core. Director Chin's voice cut through the confusion. Kinetic kill vehicles, War Prime. No guidance systems, no warheads, no advanced technology at all. Just metal balls moving at significant fractions of light speed. Your shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and guided missiles. They're not meant to stop what are essentially very fast rocks. The first impacts began seconds later. Council shields flared and failed as the kinetic projectiles punched through them like they weren't there. Armor plating designed to withstand plasma cannons crumpled under the sheer kinetic force. The Dominions shuddered as a dozen kill vehicles struck her hull, leaving gaping holes that vented atmosphere into space. Impossible, Kiftar Briatid. Our armor should. Your armor is designed to distribute heat and absorb energy, Director Chan explained patiently, as if she were teaching a classroom of children. It's not designed to stop something with the kinetic energy of a small asteroid traveling at 12% of light speed. All around the Sol system, Council ships were dying, not from exotic weapons or advanced technology, but from the oldest principle of warfare in the universe, hitting things very, very hard. This is barbaric. Flietkaptein Veltar skjutet. Civilized species don't fight like this. Director Chin's expression didn't change. War Prime, you came to our home uninvited, threatened to destroy our military installations, and planned to force us into servitude. We're not the ones who abandoned civilization here. A new alarm began sounding on the bridge. War Prime, the communications officer reported, I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet. They're preparing to fire again. Retreat, Keshtar ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Full retreat. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace. Wait, Director Chin called out, stopping him mid-command. Before you go, War Prime, there's something else you should know. We monitored your communications during the approach. We know about your Galactic Council, your 47-member species, your trade routes, your military bases, your colonies. Keshtar felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying? I'm saying that Earth isn't interested in joining your council as a subordinate member. But we are very interested in having a conversation about restructuring the whole arrangement. As equals, the War Prime stared at the human director, finally understanding what he was truly facing. This wasn't a primitive species that needed protection. This wasn't a stubborn race that required gentle coercion. This was something far more dangerous, a species that had looked at the galaxy's established order and decided it needed changing. You're threatening the entire Galactic Council, he said slowly. No, War Prime. We're offering them a choice. The same choice you offered us. Director Chin's smile widened. Join us willingly, or we'll bring you into the fold by force. For your own protection, of course. As Keshtar's fleet limped away from the Sol system, leaving behind the wreckage of 43 vessels and any pretense of council superiority, Director Chun turned to her staff. Contact the Admiralty, she said quietly. Tell them to begin Phase 2. It's time to pay some courtesy calls to our new neighbors. In the depths of space, hidden manufacturing stations began accelerating production. Millions of kinetic kill vehicles rolled off assembly lines that had been working nonstop for 5 years. Transport ships filled with the one thing Earth had in abundance. People who had trained their entire adult lives for exactly this moment. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth hadn't sent generals to negotiate. They'd sent the only thing humanity had ever truly excelled at creating, killers who were very, very good at their job. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of War Prime Keshtar's humiliating retreat from the Sol system. The massive chamber, usually filled with the dignified discourse of civilized species, now buzzed with panic and disbelief. Holographic displays showed the devastating aftermath. 43 council vessels destroyed, over 12,000 personnel killed or missing, and the remainder of the 7th Battle Fleet limping home with critical damage. Chancellor Morduck's 4 eyes swept across the assembled delegates, his massive frame trembling with barely contained rage. War Prime Keshtar explained to this council how a primitive species armed with chemical rockets managed to destroy nearly a quarter of our most advanced battle fleet. Keshtar stood at attention, his scarred carapace showing fresh damage from the battle. Honored Chancellor, the humans were not what our intelligence reports indicated. They possessed kinetic weapons of unprecedented power and deployment capability. Their tactics were barbaric, interrupted High Arbiter Quell, her synthetic form pulsing with agitated energy patterns. Kinetic bombardment? Mass drivers? These are the weapons of savages, not a civilized species. Savages who just destroyed a quarter of our fleet. Ambassador Zexthera pointed out quietly, her crystalline form dim with worry. Perhaps we should reconsider our assessment of human capabilities. Subdelegate Yith of the Aquatic Collective's gills fluttered rapidly as she accessed her personal databank. I've been reviewing historical records. No species in recorded galactic history has ever used kinetic weapons on this scale. The engineering requirements alone should be impossible for a pre-Council civilization. War Prime Keshtar cleared his throat. With respect, Subdelegate, I don't believe the humans view themselves as pre-Council civilization. During our encounter, Director Chun made it clear that they consider themselves equals seeking to restructure galactic governance. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Chancellor Morduck slammed his massive fist against his control panel, the sound echoing through the dome. Restructure? They want to restructure 40,000 years of galactic civilization? The arrogance is beyond comprehension. Is it arrogance if they have the power to back it up? Asked a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. All eyes turned to Elder Thoxami of the Ancient Collective, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Her energy-based form flickered with patterns that spoke of deep contemplation. The chamber fell silent. When an ancient spoke, everyone listened. Continue, Elder Thoxami, Chancellor Morduck said respectfully. I have witnessed the rise and fall of 17 major galactic powers over the past 6 millennia. The Elder began, her voice carrying the weight of ages. Each believed their system was perfect, their technology unbeatable, their authority unquestionable. Yet here we sit, discussing how a single primitive world shattered our most powerful fleet like it was made of glass. She paused, letting her words sink in. Perhaps the humans are not primitive. Perhaps they are simply different. And perhaps that difference represents something we have forgotten in our 40,000 years of peaceful expansion. What could we have forgotten? Asked High Arbiter Quell, her quantum processors working overtime to analyze the Elder's implications. How to fight? Elder Thoxami replied simply. When was the last time any council species faced a real war? When was the last time we had to innovate beyond our comfort zones, to find new ways to survive against an enemy who refused to follow our rules? The silence that followed was deafening. Most council species had been at peace for millennia. Their military technology had stagnated, focusing on maintaining order rather than winning wars. They had become so accustomed to overwhelming technological superiority that they had forgotten what happened when that advantage was neutralized. Chancellor Morduck broke the silence. Elder, are you suggesting we negotiate with these humans? I'm suggesting we recognize reality, the Elder replied. The humans have demonstrated that our current military doctrine is inadequate against unconventional tactics. They have also made their intentions clear. They want to discuss restructuring galactic governance. We can either have that conversation now, while we still maintain some semblance of strength, or we can have it later, after they've demonstrated their point more thoroughly. War Prime Keshtar stepped forward. Elder Thoxami speaks wisdom, but there is something else the Council should know. Before retreating, I monitored human communications. They spoke of Phase 2 and courtesy calls to neighbors. I believe they intend to make contact with Council member species directly. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. If the humans began approaching individual Council members with their own brand of diplomacy, they could destabilize the entire galactic order. Which species would they contact first? Ambassador Zexthera asked, her crystalline form now pulsing with alarm. Unknown, Keshtar admitted, but their intelligence on our operations was remarkably detailed. They seemed to know our fleet dispositions, trade routes, even our communication protocols. High Arbiter Quell's form brightened as she processed this information. If they have that level of intelligence, they would likely target our most strategically important allies first. Species whose defection would cause maximum disruption to Council authority. The Corvin Mining Consortium, Subdelegate Yith whispered. They control 60% of our rare element supplies. The Nexus Trade Alliance added another delegate. Our primary commercial partners. The hegemony border worlds, Chancellor Morduck said grimly. They protect our outer territories from pirate incursions. Elder Thoxami's form pulsed with what might have been amusement. It seems the humans understand politics as well as warfare. Impressive for a supposedly primitive species. Meanwhile, 3 days' journey from the Council's core worlds, the Corvin Mining Consortium's primary extraction facility orbited a dead star, pulling precious element from the stellar remnant's exotic matter streams. Administrator Grexon AL had run the operation for 30 standard years without incident. The facility processed enough rare elements to power a dozen star systems and employed over 50,000 beings from various species. It was, by any measure, exactly the sort of target that would send a message. Grexon L was reviewing production reports when his communications officer, a young Valonian named Keshura, called for his attention. Administrator, we're receiving a communication request from an unidentified vessel. They claim to represent the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Earth? Grexon L's thick hide wrinkled in confusion. Never heard of it. Probably some minor system looking for trade agreements. Put them through to secondary communications. Sir, they're specifically requesting to speak with you personally. They say it's regarding mutual security concerns and beneficial partnership opportunities. Something about the phrasing made Grexon AL pause. In 30 years of dealing with corporate and political entities, he had learned to recognize when someone was being very polite about delivering very serious news. Put them through to my private office, he decided. The holographic display activated to show a human woman wearing a dark uniform with minimal insignia. She appeared middle-aged, with graying hair and eyes that suggested extensive experience with difficult conversations. Administrator Grexon L, she said with a slight nod. I am Colonel Martinez of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Thank you for taking my call. Colonel Grexon L noted the military title. I was told you represented a diplomatic mission. Diplomacy and military affairs are closely related in human culture, Colonel Martinez explained smoothly. I'm here to discuss a matter of mutual interest, the future of galactic governance, and your consortium's place in it. Grexon AL's blood chilled. I'm not sure what you mean, Colonel. The Corvin Mining Consortium has no involvement in galactic politics. We simply extract resources and fulfill our contracts with the Council. And those contracts make you one of the most powerful entities in this sector, Martinez replied. 60% of the Council's rare element supply flows through your facilities. If that supply were to be interrupted, it would have significant consequences for galactic stability. The threat was politely worded, but unmistakable. Grexon AL's hands moved toward his emergency communication controls, but Martinez's next words stopped him. Administrator, before you alert Council security, I should mention that we're not here alone. My ship is accompanied by a small escort force that is currently mapping your facility's defensive capabilities. Not to attack, you understand, but to better appreciate the challenges you face in protecting such a valuable installation. How many ships? Grexon L asked quietly. 237. Give or take a few squadrons are still arriving. The number hit Grexon L like a physical blow. 200 ships was larger than most Council patrol fleets. What do you want? A conversation, Martinez said simply. Earth is interested in establishing direct trade relationships with major galactic industrial powers. We have certain capabilities that might be of interest to a forward-thinking administrator, such as yourself. What kind of capabilities? Colonel Martinez smiled, and like Director Chin smiled before the battle at Seoul, there was something predatory about it. Protection services, for one. The galaxy is becoming increasingly dangerous. Pirate attacks, rogue AI incursions, and now there are rumors of instability within the Council itself. A facility like yours would be an attractive target for hostile forces. The Council Navy protects our operations, Grexon L said, though his voice lacked conviction. Does it? The Council Navy just lost 43 ships to a single primitive world. How confident are you in their ability to protect a fixed installation against a determined enemy? Grexanel was quiet for a long moment. What are you proposing? Partnership. Earth provides security services and defensive technology in exchange for preferential trade agreements and rare element access. Think of it as diversifying your political portfolio. And if I refuse, then you refuse, Martinez said with a shrug. We're not in the business of forcing partnerships, though I should mention that several other mining consortiums and trading alliances have expressed interest in discussing similar arrangements. Market competition, you understand. The implication was clear. Earth was making this offer to multiple suppliers simultaneously. If Grexanel refused, his competitors would gain access to human military protection while he remained dependent on a council navy that had just proven its limitations. What would this partnership entail specifically? Initially, we would establish a joint security force to protect your facilities, human ships, and personnel working alongside your existing security. In exchange, Earth would receive a modest percentage of your rare element output at negotiated prices. Modest percentage? 12%. Far less than the Council's current taxation rate of 28%. Grexanel's mind raced. If he could reduce his overhead by 16% while gaining military protection that had already proven superior to Council forces, the profit margins would be enormous. I would need to consult with the consortium board, he said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. Martinez paused meaningfully. Though I should mention that this offer has a limited window. Earth's diplomatic schedule is quite busy these days. After the communication ended, Grexanel sat in his office, staring at the star charts on his wall. For 30 years, he had operated under council protection, paying their taxes, following their regulations, accepting their authority without question. But the humans had made him realize something uncomfortable. The Council's protection was only as good as their ability to provide it. And that ability had just been called into serious question. Within hours, similar conversations were taking place across the galaxy. The Nexus Trade Alliance received a visit from Commander Jackson, who pointed out that Earth's industrial capacity could provide alternative suppliers for any goods the Council might restrict in retaliation for independent trade agreements. The hegemony border worlds found themselves in discussion with Admiral Thompson, who demonstrated human kinetic weapon technology by obliterating several large asteroids in what she called a defensive capabilities assessment. Each conversation was polite, professional, and utterly terrifying in its implications. The humans weren't conquering through force. They were making offers that were simply too good to refuse, backed by military power that made refusal impractical. By the end of the week, 17 major council allies had signed preliminary agreements with Earth. Not full defections, but security partnerships and trade diversification protocols that gave humanity significant influence over galactic infrastructure. When the news reached the council chamber, Chancellor Morduck stared at the reports in stunned silence. They're not just threatening us, he said slowly. They're building their own galactic order, using our own allies. Elder Thoxami's ancient form flickered with what might have been admiration. Fascinating. They've weaponized capitalism and turned our own governance structure against us. It's been less than a week since their first military victory, and they've already positioned themselves as an alternative power center. What do we do? Ambassador Zexthera asked. We adapt, the elder replied, because the alternative is becoming irrelevant. In the depths of space, human fleets continued their diplomatic missions, carrying offers of partnership to species that had never imagined they had a choice. And back in the Sol system, production facilities worked around the clock, building the tools of a new galactic order. The humans had learned something in their short, violent history that the peaceful council had forgotten. Power belonged to those willing to use it effectively. And Earth was about to remind the galaxy exactly what effective looked like. 3 months after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council faced a reality that would have been unthinkable just a year earlier. Their authority was crumbling, not through direct conquest, but through something far more insidious: choice. species after species was discovering that they had alternatives to council membership, alternatives that came with better terms and superior protection. The breaking point came when the Zephyrian Republic, one of the council's founding members, formally announced their withdrawal. Ambassador Velthara of the Zephyrians stood before the emergency assembly, her elegant form radiating calm determination. Behind her, holographic displays showed the stunning results of her people's new partnership with Earth. Trade revenues up 40%, pirate attacks down to 0, and technological advancement accelerating at unprecedented rates. Honored delegates, she began. The Zephyrian Republic has thrived for 2,000 years as a member of this council. We have contributed our resources, our expertise, and our loyalty to the cause of galactic peace and prosperity. Chancellor Morduck leaned forward in his massive chair, his four eyes fixed on the Zephyrian ambassador. Ambassador Velthara, surely the Republic isn't considering. We are withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately, she announced, her words cutting through the chamber like a blade. The Republic has signed a comprehensive alliance with the Earth Federation. We believe this partnership better serves the long-term interests of our people. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions and protests in dozens of languages while the translation matrix struggled to keep up. High Arbiter Quell's synthetic form flickered rapidly as her quantum processors tried to calculate the implications of losing a founding member. Order! Chancellor Morduck roared, his voice silencing the tumult. Ambassador, this is madness. The Zephyrian Republic cannot simply abandon 40,000 years of shared civilization for some upstart species they've known for months. Velthara's expression remained serene. Chancellor, with respect, the humans have demonstrated in 3 months what the Council has failed to achieve in centuries: actual protection for their allies. She gestured to her holographic displays. Our border worlds have been under constant pirate attack for the past 50 years. The Council Navy's response has been to file reports and promise future action. The humans eliminated the pirate threat in 6 days. Ow! War Prime Keshtar demanded, his scarred carapace gleaming under the chamber lights. They didn't send patrol ships to chase pirates after attacks occurred, Velthara explained. They sent hunter-killer squadrons to the pirates' bases and eliminated them entirely. No negociations, no warnings, no bureaucratic delays. Just swift, decisive action. Subdelegate Yitha's gills fluttered nervously. But surely the humans' methods were excessive. The pirates are gone, Velthara replied simply. Our merchants can trade freely for the first time in decades. Our colonies can focus on growth instead of defense. How is this excessive? Elder Thoxami's ancient form pulsed thoughtfully. Ambassador, what assurances do you have that the humans won't simply replace the pirates with their own exploitation? For the first time, Velthara smiled. Elder, the humans have shown us something revolutionary. A protection arrangement that costs less than what we were paying in council taxes, provides better security than the council navy, and comes with no restrictions on our internal governance. They're not seeking to control us. They're seeking to trade with us. That's naive, High Arbiter Quell interjected. Every galactic power seeks control. It's the nature of expansion. Is it? Velthara asked. Have you studied human history, Arbiter? They've tried empire building. It didn't work well for them. They learned something from their failures, that willing partners are more valuable than reluctant subjects. War Prime Keshtar stood abruptly. This partnership will not last. Once the humans have what they want, they will abandon you or demand more than you're willing to give. Perhaps, Velthara acknowledged. But if that happens, we'll deal with it then. For now, they offer us something the Council doesn't: genuine choice. She turned to address the full assembly. How many of you have ever questioned Council policies? How many have wished for alternatives to the standard trade agreements, security arrangements, or technological restrictions? The humans don't offer perfection. They offer options. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated her words. For most Council species, the current system had existed for so long it seemed natural inevitable. The idea that it could be different was both thrilling and terrifying. Chancellor Morduck's voice was heavy with resignation. If the Republic is determined to leave, we cannot stop you. But consider the precedent you're setting. If every species begins pursuing independent alliances, galactic civilization will fragment into chaos. Or evolve into something better, Velthra replied. Chancellor, the humans didn't destroy your fleet at Sol through superior technology. They did it through superior thinking. Perhaps it's time the galaxy tried some new thinking as well. As the Zephyrian ambassador departed, taking with her 2 millennia of council membership, the remaining delegates sat in stunned contemplation. The withdrawal of a founding member wasn't just a political crisis. It was an existential threat to everything the council represented. But far from the council chambers, in the bustling trade ports and frontier colonies where ordinary beings live their daily lives, a different conversation was taking place. Word of the human alliance was spreading, and with it, a dangerous new concept, the idea that the galactic status quo was negotiable. On the mining world of Kepler, 442b, Foreman Thaxaviel received his first visit from a human trade representative. The woman, who introduced herself as Commander Sarah Park of the Earth Commercial Relations Division, presented an offer that seemed too good to be true. We understand your operation has been struggling with equipment maintenance, she said, gesturing to the aging fusion extractors that dominated the landscape. Earth has developed some new technologies that might interest you. Thaxaviel studied the holographic displays she projected. The human designs were remarkably different from Council standard equipment. More robust, easier to maintain, and significantly more efficient. This technology is impressive, he admitted, but we're bound by Council trade regulations. We can only purchase equipment approved by the Technology Assessment Board. What if you didn't need Council approval? Commander Park asked casually. I don't understand. Kepler, 442b, is technically an independent world. You pay Council taxes and follow Council regulations because your government chooses to, not because you have to. What if you chose differently? Tux WELS thick hide paled. The Council would cut off our trade relationships. Our protection, would they? Park interrupted. The Council Navy is stretched thin these days. As for trade, Earth is prepared to offer exclusive contracts for your mineral output at prices 20% above current Council rates. She paused to let the numbers sink in. Plus, we provide military protection, technological support, and unrestricted access to Earth's growing trade network. All you have to do is declare neutrality in Council politics and sign a bilateral agreement with Earth. And if the Council objects, Commander Park's smile was sharp. Let them. Similar conversations were happening on hundreds of worlds. The humans weren't conquering territory. They were offering alternatives. Better prices, superior protection, advanced technology, and, most importantly, respect for local autonomy. For species that had spent centuries following Council directives without question, the novelty was intoxicating. Within weeks, entire star systems were declaring independence from Council authority. Some joined the growing Earth Alliance directly, while others simply opted for neutrality. The result was the same. The Council's sphere of influence was contracting rapidly. In response, Chancellor Morduck called for emergency military action. We cannot allow this hemorrhaging of member worlds, he declared to a hastily assembled War Council. If we don't act decisively, the Council will cease to exist within a year. War Prime Keshtar, still bearing scars from his encounter with human forces, was less optimistic. Honored Chancellor, our intelligence suggests the humans now have over 500 allied worlds. Their combined military strength exceeds our own. Then, we target Earth directly, High Arbiter Quell suggested, her synthetic form pulsing with aggressive algorithms. Cut off the head of the serpent before it can grow larger. With what fleet? Keshtar asked grimly. Half our ships are protecting remaining loyal worlds from pirate attacks that suspiciously coincide with human diplomatic missions. The other half are barely adequate to defend our core systems. The grim truth was that Earth's strategy had been brilliantly simple. They hadn't needed to defeat the Council militarily. They had simply made Council membership less attractive than the alternatives. Every world that switched sides strengthened Earth while weakening the Council, creating a cascade effect that accelerated with each defection. Elder Thoxami, who had remained silent during the War Council, finally spoke. Perhaps it's time to consider a different approach. What do you suggest, Elder? Chancellor Morduck asked. Negotiation. Real negotiation, not the ultimatums and demands we've relied on for millennia. The humans want to restructure galactic governance. Maybe we should find out what that actually means. The suggestion was met with horrified silence. For 40,000 years, the Council had been the supreme authority in galactic affairs. The idea of negotiating as equals with a species they had dismissed as primitive just months earlier was almost incomprehensible. But as reports continued to arrive of more worlds switching sides, the impossible began to seem inevitable. The Council could fight a war they couldn't win, or they could try to understand what the humans actually wanted. Back on Earth, Director Chun stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching as holographic displays showed the shifting balance of galactic power. Red markers indicated Council loyalist worlds steadily shrinking. Blue markers showed Earth allies growing by the day. Yellow indicated neutral or undecided systems, many of which were already in preliminary negotiations. Status report, she requested from her aide, a young lieutenant named Marcus Rivera. 17 new alliance agreements signed this week, Rivera reported. The Andromedan shipyards, the Tau Ceti Agricultural Collective, and the entire Orion Mining Federation. Total allied systems now number 543. Resistance. The Council core worlds are holding firm, but they're effectively isolated. Our intelligence suggests they're considering opening formal negotiations. Director Chin nodded thoughtfully. And our military readiness? All combat fleets are at full operational capacity. The new kinetic platforms are online in all major systems. If the Council chooses to fight, we're ready. They won't fight, Chin said quietly. They're politicians and administrators, not warriors. They'll negotiate because it's the only rational choice left. She turned to study a detailed map of Council space. The real challenge will be what comes next. It's easy to tear down an old system. Building a better one is much harder. Lieutenant Rivera looked confused. Mom? I thought the goal was human expansion and security. Chun smiled, the same predatory expression that had unnerved War Prime Keshtar months earlier. Lieutenant, human security comes from a stable galaxy. And a stable galaxy requires governance that works for everyone, not just the species in charge. She gestured to the holographic display. The Council failed because they tried to control too much while protecting too little. We're not going to make the same mistake. We're going to build something new, a confederation of willing allies, bound by mutual interest rather than imposed authority. And if some species prefer the old system, then they're welcome to it, Chin replied. But they'll have to make it work without exploiting everyone else. Competition breeds innovation, Lieutenant, even in galactic governance. As Earth's influence continued to spread and the Council's authority crumbled, the galaxy prepared for a conversation that was 40,000 years overdue. The age of imposed order was ending. What would replace it remained to be seen, but one thing was certain. The humans had ensured that whatever came next would be built on choice rather than compulsion. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy was going to discover what that really meant. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the first Galactic Restructuring Conference convened on Nexus Prime, a neutral world at the intersection of major trade routes. The choice of venue was deliberate, neither Earth nor Council territory, but a place where the galaxy's future could be negotiated on equal terms. The conference hall was a marvel of adaptive architecture, designed to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different species. Atmospheric zones shifted seamlessly between regions, gravity fields adjusted to comfort delegates, and Translation matrices provided real-time communication in over 300 languages. Director Sarah Chun entered the hall wearing a simple black uniform with minimal decoration, followed by a small entourage of advisors and military officers. Their understated appearance contrasted sharply with the elaborate ceremonial garb of the council delegates, a deliberate message about the changing nature of galactic power. Chancellor Morduck sat at the head of the traditional council formation, his massive frame dwarfing the ornate chair designed to display his authority. Around him, the surviving council members had arranged themselves according to 40,000 years of precedent and protocol. Across from them, the human delegation occupied a simple semicircle of identical chairs, projecting equality rather than hierarchy. Between the two main delegations sat representatives from the hundreds of worlds that had declared neutrality or independence during the past months. Their presence transformed the gathering from a bilateral negotiation into something unprecedented, a truly galactic constitutional convention. Elder Thaksami, whose energy-based form flickered with patterns of deep contemplation, spoke first. We gather to discuss the future of galactic governance. For 40 millennia, the Council has provided stability and order. Yet recent events suggest that our methods may no longer serve the galaxy's needs. Recent events suggest that our methods never served anyone but ourselves, interrupted Ambassador Krellin AV of the Outer Rim Coalition, a group of frontier worlds that had united under human protection. How many species were conquered for their own good? How many worlds were exploited to fund council expansion? Chancellor Morduck's 4 eyes fixed on the Coalition ambassador. The Council brought peace to a galaxy torn by war. We ended the age of predatory expansion and created a framework for civilized cooperation. You ended the age of honest war and replaced it with bureaucratic oppression, Director Chen said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. At least when species fought openly, they had the chance to win. High Arbiter Quell's synthetic form pulsed with indignation. Director Chun, the Council system has prevented countless conflicts and saved billions of lives. Has it? Chun asked, activating a holographic display that filled the space between the delegations. Let's examine the data. The display showed a galactic map spanning the last 10,000 years. Red zones indicated areas of conflict, suffering, and exploitation under Council rule. Blue zones showed regions of peace and prosperity. The pattern was clear. The Council core worlds enjoyed stability and wealth, while the periphery suffered constant low-level conflicts, economic exploitation, and technological stagnation. Your peace was built on exporting violence to the margins, Chun continued. Pirates, raiders, rogue AI collectives, they weren't natural phenomena. They were the inevitable result of a system that kept most of the galaxy desperate while a few species lived in luxury. Ambassador Velthara of the former Zephyrian Republic nodded in agreement. The humans showed us something we had forgotten, that security comes from strength, not from hiding behind others' strength. War Prime Keshtar, still bearing visible scars from his encounter with human forces, spoke with grudging respect. Director Chun, your species has certainly demonstrated strength, but strength without wisdom leads to tyranny. What assurance do we have that human governance will be different from council governance? Chun smiled, the expression that had become legendary among galactic diplomats. War Prime, you're asking the wrong question. We're not here to replace council governance with human governance. We're here to replace governance by dominance with governance by consent. She gestured to the neutral delegates surrounding them. Every world represented here has made a choice about its future. Some chose alliance with Earth. Others chose independence. A few remained with the Council. The difference is that now they actually get to choose. Chancellor Morduck, you describe chaos, not governance. Without central authority, the galaxy will fragment into 1,000 competing factions. Will it? Asked Ambassador Thrindar of the Independent Mining Consortium. In the 6 months since we left the Council, inter-system trade has increased by 40%. Piracy has dropped to historic lows. Technological advancement has accelerated beyond anything we experienced under council management. Because the humans are subsidizing your operations, High Arbiter Quell pointed out. What happens when they decide those subsidies are no longer beneficial? Director Chun stood and walked to the central display, her movement drawing every delegate's attention. Arbiter, you're still thinking in terms of the old paradigm. You assume that if someone has power, they must be using it to exploit others. But humans learn something from our own history. Exploitation is ultimately self-defeating. She manipulated the display to show Earth's historical timeline. For most of our history, we thought power meant the ability to control others. We built empires, subjugated populations, extracted resources from conquered territories. It never worked for long because resistance is the natural response to oppression. The display shifted to show the rise and fall of human civilizations, each collapse followed by painful lessons and gradual progress toward more sustainable systems. We learned that real power comes from voluntary cooperation, Chun continued. A willing ally is worth 10 reluctant subjects. A trading partner is more valuable than a conquered province. And an independent neighbor who chooses friendship is more reliable than a vassal who dreams of rebellion. Elder Thoxami's form brightened with interest. You propose a confederation based on mutual benefit rather than imposed hierarchy? I propose we stop pretending that any single species or organization can manage a galaxy containing billions of worlds and trillions of intelligent beings, Chen replied. Instead, we create a framework that allows voluntary association, mutual defense, and free trade while respecting local autonomy. And who enforces this framework? Chancellor Morduk demanded. Who maintains order when conflicts arise? Everyone and no one, Chen said. Each member contributes to collective security according to their ability. Conflicts are resolved through arbitration and mutual agreement. And if a member chooses to leave, they're free to do so. The implications sent shock waves through the council delegation. A system where membership was truly voluntary, where central authority could be questioned or rejected, where local autonomy was respected rather than merely tolerated. It was everything they'd spent millennia trying to prevent. Impossible, Subdelegate Yith whispered. How do you prevent the strong from exploiting the weak without central authority? By making exploitation unprofitable, Ambassador Velthari answered. In the human system, a species that abuses its neighbors quickly finds itself isolated, without trade partners or allies. The humans demonstrated this when they eliminated the pirate networks, not through superior authority, but through superior cooperation. War Prime Keshtar leaned forward, his military mind grappling with the strategic implications. Director Chun, this system you describe requires an unprecedented level of trust between species. How do you ensure that trust isn't betrayed? You don't, Chun replied simply. Trust can be betrayed, agreements can be broken, alliances can fail. But the alternative is a system based on fear and control, which guarantees eventual rebellion. We choose trust because the alternatives are worse. She returned to her seat, her expression serious. War Prime, you asked about assurance that humans won't become tyrants. I can't give you that assurance because no species should have that kind of power. What I can promise is that our system is designed to prevent any single entity from accumulating enough authority to dominate others. The debate continued for hours, then days, as delegates grappled with concepts that challenged 40,000 years of accepted wisdom. Some council species remained loyal to the old system, unable or unwilling to contemplate alternatives. Others were intrigued by the possibility of genuine self-determination. But it was the neutral delegates who drove the conversation toward resolution. World after world shared their experiences under the new arrangement. The increased prosperity, the enhanced security, the freedom to make choices about their own futures. The evidence was overwhelming. The human model worked better for most species than the council system. On the seventh day of negotiations, Elder Thoxami made an announcement that shocked even the humans. The ancient collective has decided to join the proposed confederation. The chamber fell silent. The ancients were the oldest known species in the galaxy, their wisdom and neutrality legendary. Their support for any system carried enormous weight. Elder, Chancellor Morduck said carefully, "Surely the ancients don't need protection from a young species like humanity?" "We need nothing from humans," Elder Thoxami agreed. "But we recognize wisdom when we see it. For 6 millennia, I have watched civilizations rise and fall because they could not adapt to changing circumstances. The humans offer something new, a system designed to evolve rather than ossify." Her ancient form pulsed with amusement. "Besides, it will be fascinating to see what happens when governance is based on consent rather than control. As a student of history, I wouldn't want to miss such an experiment." The ancient endorsement triggered an avalanche. Species that had been hesitating suddenly found the courage to embrace change. Even some council loyalists began to waver as the benefits of a new system became undeniable. In the end, the Galactic Restructuring Conference produced not a single government, but a framework for voluntary association called the Mutual Defense and Prosperity Compact. The MDPC guaranteed each member's sovereignty while providing mechanisms for collective action when needed. Trade was free, but fair. Security was shared, but not imposed, and membership was always voluntary. The old Galactic Council didn't disappear. It transformed into one of several regional organizations within the larger compact. Chancellor Morduck, after much deliberation, chose to lead this reformed council as a federal entity serving species that preferred more structured governance. As the conference concluded, Director Chun found herself standing beside Warprime Keshtar on an observation deck, overlooking Nexus Prime's sprawling cityscape. The view showed beings from dozens of species interacting freely, trading, learning, and building together. "Director," Keshtar said quietly, "I must admit that when we first met, I thought humans were simply another aggressive species seeking dominance." Chun smiled. "We are aggressive, Warprime. But we learned to be aggressive about building rather than destroying. And if this experiment fails, if trust breaks down and the galaxy fractures into chaos, then we'll learn from the failure and try something else," Chun replied. "That's what intelligent species do. They adapt and improve." Keshtar was quiet for a moment. "You know, there's something I never understood about that first battle at Seoul. Your kinetic weapons were devastatingly effective, but they required enormous industrial capacity to produce. How did a species that had only recently achieved interstellar travel manage such massive manufacturing?" Chen's smile widened. "Warprime, you're still thinking in old patterns. You assumed that because we were new to space travel, we were new to everything. But humans have been building things on an industrial scale for centuries. We just applied that experience to space-based manufacturing. But the resources, the infrastructure, we built it all in 5 years," Chun said simply. "Every human settlement, every space station, every manufacturing facility was constructed with one goal in mind, preparing for the conversation we knew would come." Understanding dawned on Keshtar's scarred features. "You planned this from the beginning. The diplomatic rejection, the military demonstration, the alliance building, it was all coordinated." "It was necessary," Chun replied. "The galaxy needed a change, but change only comes through crisis. We provided the crisis and the solution simultaneously. And if we had simply accepted your initial proposal for restructuring, then we would have tried diplomacy first and saved everyone a lot of trouble. But humans learn from history, Warprime. We know that entrenched power never yields without pressure." As Keshtar contemplated this revelation, he realized something profound about the species that had revolutionized galactic governance. The humans hadn't sent generals because they didn't think like generals. They thought like revolutionaries, patient, strategic, and utterly committed to fundamental change. The galaxy was entering a new age, one where power flowed from consent rather than conquest, where diversity was strength rather than weakness, and where the future would be built by those brave enough to choose it freely. And at the heart of this transformation were the humans, a species that had looked at 40,000 years of galactic civilization and decided it needed improvement. They hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They had done something far more effective. They had given it hope. As the last delegates departed Nexus Prime to return to their transformed worlds, the galaxy began its greatest experiment in voluntary governance. The results would take generations to fully understand, but one thing was already clear: the age of imposed order was over. The age of chosen cooperation had begun, and humanity, the species that had refused to bow to superior authority, had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be free.